Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's EBC video. We're at my brother Mike's house in Grafton, Wisconsin, thinking about this beautiful garden behind us and the saying, "You are what you eat." Actually, we're thinking about Mark 7, and it's sort of the opposite of what you are what you eat. It's verses 1 through 8, and then 14 and 15, and 21 through 23. And as the story starts, Jesus and his disciples are eating, and the Pharisees are around them. And the Pharisees notice that the disciples haven't washed their hands. And that's a big deal in old Jewish tradition, because if you didn't wash your hands, you defiled the food that you were eating. And then if you defiled the food that you were eating, you were defiling yourself by putting that food in you. So they ask Jesus, they say, "Why are your disciples eating without washing their hands?" And look, it's not a sort of like a question of wonderment or information. It's definitely a challenge. And Jesus takes it that way. Basically, he calls the Pharisees a bunch of hypocrites. And he says at that point, look, you're paying lip service by the things that you say, but then your hearts are very far away from God. And then he turns to the crowd and he says, it's not what you put in you that defiles you. It's what comes out of you that defiles you, right? And when we think about that in our everyday lives, of course, on the one hand, that makes tons of sense, right? If we have this broccoli, for instance, I'm not going to be a better person because I ate the broccoli. I might be healthier, it might be good for me, but I'm not going to behave better because I ate the broccoli, right? When we think about what God is asking us to do, it's not necessarily just following the rules about eating certain things or washing our hands a certain way. And it really is more about making sure that our hearts are getting closer to God, that we're doing the things that God wants for us. Now, but I also want to mention that sometimes people take readings like this one and think about this reading as though it's saying, don't worry at all about religious tradition. Don't worry at all about rules like only eating certain things. There are people who follow those rules really, really importantly. And when they do that, it's because it's bringing them closer to God. It's filling their heart. That's how they remember God and how they think about God. And that discipline helps them to be closer to God. If that's something that works for you, that's fantastic. But what Jesus is saying is, let's make sure we're not doing it just for the sake of doing it. Let's do it so that we're getting closer to God while we're doing it. Okay, so everyone, this week, as you're thinking about your relationship with God, think about the ways in which you remember to be closer to God. Is it because you have a tradition that you always get up and do a little bit of something where you read the Bible or something like that? Is it something where you're just more impromptu? It's a prayer that you say in the middle of the day when you need God's help with something? It can be any of those things. The relationship that you have with God is yours. So don't worry about the rules, but make sure you are behaving in a way that shows God that you're getting closer